Good afternoon and welcome to Villages for Change first Zoom call. My name's Helen Paris and I'll be your moderator for today. First of all, we'd like to thank you all for taking the time to join us this afternoon. Today is about explaining how we came to be, our mission statement, encouraging an active discussion with you fellow residents about questions that you might have, as well as concerns about our current issues in the villages. We don't purport to have all the answers, but believe that through an active discussion, when people can talk to each other and listen, positive changes can occur. After our introduction, we intend to address several key concerns that fellow villagers have raised or sent to us. Most of all, we want to hear from you. Are the points we have brought up in alignment with your feelings? What other thoughts do you as a resident have? Do you have some area of concern you would like to bring up? Please use 3 methods to be recognized. 1, you can raise your hand feature at the bottom of the page. I will see that and call on you. You can go to the chat feature and type your concern. Once it is brought up, you will be invited to unmute for further discussion on your post. Or 3, use mute and ask to unmute to state your question or concern. We believe that everyone's opinion matters. And so at the end of this meeting, we intend to post a link to this recorded Zoom call to our VFC website. We believe that although there's only room for 100 today, we know many of you may share these same concerns. And our hope is through an active discussion that we can really start to listen and engage all villagers in positive change and allow this conduit to be a guiding light for all the boards and management to listen to each other. Thank you so much. And at this, I'd like to throw the first question or the first statement over to Val Smith. Thank you.
And the length of time it took to sell a place in the villages. And I asked at the end of my post, I asked if anybody else was concerned. Well, that sort of opened the floodgates, and I got many dozens of comments. People called me, people texted me, and one gentleman in particular, who has become a friend of mine, Norman Krishna, he sent me an extremely long and detailed and interesting write-up on costs in the villages, HOA, the history, and some other issues. And so he and I started a conversation. We were able to get together in my backyard with masks on and talk it out. And we decided that there might be enough here to work on these issues and get some other people together to work on some of the issues that we have and that we are concerned about. And so we each went off and talked to people and ended up with about 8 people in our group. We call them the core membership, or they're the leadership team, if you will. And we met, we started meeting, we met about every week. And we made sure to ask people that we knew would be effective and that we knew were hardworking, because as it turns out, we put a lot of hours into Villagers for Change every week. And so we got our group together and went around and said, how long have you been here? What have you noticed? What are you concerned about? And the funny part is that all 8 of us were saying the same thing, which, sort of makes it easier. And we decided, we all expressed how we loved living here. None of us wants to leave the villages, but that we recognize that there are some problems that could get worse, and that we were concerned about them. With a lot of talk, we funneled our concerns into 3 basic areas. And Liz, maybe you can put the focus slide up for now, and I'll talk with that slide up. All of our concerns actually fell under 3 major buckets. One was costs. I think you'll get this on a screen here. Maybe not.
You hold on a second.
Okay. Let me
That's
just
okay.
pause.
Just kind of keep rolling and we'll pop them.
All right. Okay. So no, wrong. There you go. Thank you. So our focus came down to three buckets: costs, things like stabilizing HOAs, big topics like fiscal responsibility and logical cost cutting. Then we went on to communications, and these things are all tightly woven together, really. Communications that we want clear, transparent communications. We want it in a timely manner. We want the village's governance, the boards and the management, to listen to us and to want to listen to us. We feel that residents are not as active as they could be or should be in all of our areas of focus, because it's discouraging to go to board meetings and attend them month after month after month, and you don't have much opportunity to speak. You can speak some, but we thought that communications was going in the wrong direction, and it was actually shutting down more over the last few years. And in communications, we also considered IT and the villager newspaper, the residents portal on the website. And we need to make it easier to get information, and we need to have up-to-date information. And the third thing that concerned all of us, because I think when we first met, we had just gone through a possible evacuation. We had the fire behind us. And so that was very much top of mind. And we do not have fire protocols, wildfire protocols in the villages. We have wonderful stuff on earthquake, but we don't address wildfires. We don't address tremendous wildfire smoke that we get from other areas. And we don't really address the safety issues that are involved when we have long power outages. And Olivas had a very long power outage, or parts of Olivas, I think in August. And so that brought up a lot of concern. I know that the EPC is starting to work on getting protocols. We feel that there's got to be a lot of thought given to evacuation in the context of evacuating the villages, in the context of evacuating our people in the villages who are unable to drive, and in the context of evacuation from the villages and through the neighborhoods that surround us, and where should we try to go to. So those three issues, almost everything we care about falls under one of those issues. But I can see Liz wants me to move on, so I'll move on to my next and last slide. So we have our three buckets that we care about: cost, communication, safety. We are doing a lot of research on those issues. We're writing white papers, but the ultimate goal for us, really, where all of that will take us, we hope, is we hope to elect new directors to the association and club boards who agree with us on these three buckets: cost, communications, and safety. We will work with people who want to run for the board. If they agree with the things that concern, if they have the same concerns, we will gladly help people campaign. We will help them in any way we can. And once they're on the board, we will help in any way we can. We want to do everything we can to make this a community where people can afford to stay, and we're not losing our friends and neighbors because they're moving away because of the costs. Also, an important thing I want to leave with, this is the last of it. Our group wants to work with management. We want to work with the boards. We are not a board. We are not a club. We are not recognized by the villages as such, but we want to work with management and the boards, because we think that people like us people like you have a lot to give. There's a lot of expertise here in the villages, a lot of hardworking people, and we think it's time for us to get together, to get people together, to make a contribution. So
Okay, well,
that's about
thank
it.
you.
Yeah.
So, obviously there's a lot of thoughts that all of you guys are going through. What I wanted to point out is that there is a chat feature at the very bottom. And if you have something that you would like to bring up to us, really today is about us listening. And we wanted to give you just a little bit of food for thought of the hot buttons, if you will. And so Ron's going to take hopefully only about 3 or 4 minutes here to go through some of the key questions that have been posed to us over the last several months. So Ron Steckel is going to hop on board right now. And if you guys could utilize either the wave feature, if you'd like to say something, we really want to hear everybody's comments. We're not going to do time limits here today. This is our checks and balance to see if we're going in the right direction. There's a couple people that are starting to throw some questions up. So Bob, I see you. Ouija, I see you. I'm going to let Ron talk real brief, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit some of these questions. Okay?
Good afternoon. I'm Ron Steckel. I've been a resident here at the Villages for 6 years. I live in the estates up in the Levis, and I've been a director on the homeowners board, chairman of their ACC, as well as the estates DAC, just as some background. And I wanted to start off with a heartfelt message to all of you. For most residents, the Villages was intended to be our forever home. Let that sink in for a minute. We have all made life changes to get here, and we planned to stay here. At least I did, and I think many of you also. No one came here with the grand plan to move again. This peace of mind was something that we worked hard for in our careers and expected to be able to enjoy, to make friends, to enjoy the amenities, and to embrace nature. This dream is splintering and has been shattered for many already. So why do I say this? Well, folks, look around. Our neighbors and friends are leaving. Many have not left yet, but they have plans to leave. They're looking already. They're researching other markets, places to go, even though they don't want to. Most of us are on fixed incomes and can't afford the trend of ever increasing HOA fees. Home prices are falling. Our home prices are falling. Rising costs tarnish the desirability and the affordability of our homes. Resale value is eroding. Residents are even taking out second mortgages to fund their retirements. People are feeling abandoned, betrayed, and ignored. This is a travesty, and the responsibility for this falls to the boards and the GM. However, and this is important, it doesn't have to be a lost cause. We can once again enjoy all that the Villages has to offer, but change, real meaningful change is necessary right here, right now. VFC, the Villagers for Change, knows what is required and how to execute. We are ready, willing, and able to be part of the solution. Let's get our peace of mind back, our dreams. Let's get that back. Thanks.
So along that, Ron, could you speak briefly to the costs, some of the costs that we have kind of uncovered that kind of have led us to believe that there is a way that we can reverse the trend in higher and higher and higher costs to each of us every year?
Sure. I guess the best way to start to answer that question is we need to get people to embrace the thought process that the Villages is nothing more than a company. It has ins and outs, ins, revenue, income, outs, expenses. And it's no different than our own personal budgets and the way we've gotten to where we are in our lives by balancing those extremes. When we used to work, it was salaries and income, and our expenses are all the things that we spend money on. Well, in the villages, revenues are made up of HOA fees. That's the largest category for where money comes from in order to fund this business called the villages. HOA fees represent 60% of the total available, let's call it, pool of income. The other two, just for reference, are the food and bar, the restaurant, which is 20%, and golf-related items, which is about 12. So these three items, our HOA fees, the restaurant, and golf, comes out to be 92% of the total amount of money that's available for people to fund the villages. On the other hand, on the expense line, there are a number of categories that consume that money. The largest by far is wages and benefits of the employees. So many of you may not know, but there's 129 full-time equivalent staff on board in the villages. This doesn't include consultants and other external people.
And Ron, does that also include Brightview, or that's an outside source
That's
too?
it's an outside service. We have a contract with Brightview, and it's one of our expenses. It's a large expense, but it's a separate activity unrelated to the 129 people. The other categories are cost of sales, like the supplies and things that support the restaurant or the materials that we consume, landscaping and water and utilities. But 62% of our expenses are tied up in funding 129 employees. And it's interesting that those employees have benefited from some rather, I would call it generous arrangements. One is a 3.75% wage pool increase this year. When in the Santa Clara Valley in general, it's hard to get wage increases for those of us that used to work more than 2% a year. So it's pretty rich. There's a 401k pool of 3% that also hits those people, as well as other benefits and sort of perks. But the overall wages and benefits is $9 million. And it's budgeted to increase 6.7% this year. $9 million for those 129 people. And here's the confusing part, and this is where it maybe can come to speak to the question, how do we get control of this? Well, first of all, with things being as restricted and cut back as they have been, no fault of anybody's, it's just the way it is. We all know the story. We have 52 people in the restaurant. We have 21 in maintenance, 18 in public safety, G&A, that's the administrative group, the managers, 11, janitorial, 10, and 7 in the pro shop. And you say, well, what are all those people doing with everything being so restricted and so cut back? And maybe going to continue that way for several more months or even longer than we want. And the answer is, we don't know. It would seem that if there were going to be expense reductions, one would look to the staffing. Because it's the largest pool of money. It's again, 62%, $9 million. And it's unclear if there's been any aggressive activity to make that come into line with what the villages has to offer. But
Ron, excuse me, but how much money the last couple of years has our budget gone up in wages and compensations?
In the last 3 years, we've had increases of,
I believe it's over $500,000 each year.
we've had increases of 6.2% in 2019, 4.9%, and 6.1%. So that's an average of 5%. And the unfortunate situation seems to be that because the homeowners' fees, our HOA fees, are such a large pool of money, it's the first place management looks towards to find the money to fuel the machine. And the problem with that is, if you're paying $1,000 today, I picked just a round number, if you're paying $1,000 a month, some pay more, some pay less, and you increase it like the last 3 years at 5%, and you extend that at the same rate based on inflation and everything else, another 7 years, that $1,000 that hits your pocketbook and my pocketbook increases to $1,600 a month. And that's why I said it's unaffordable, it's unsustainable. We can't just not look at other areas to get ourselves in balance. And one of the things I think that's been a problem is that it's so easy to just do what we've always done. And what we need to look at is for every dollar that's spent, what is the value that the residents, all of us, derive from that expenditure? There's plenty of areas of money to reduce these costs and to reduce, not to accept 5% increases, but to say we accept 0 increases, 0. I don't know how long, a year, every other year, but we don't have to continue down this road. It's unsustainable and unaffordable, and the villagers, for friends, our team, our VFC team has got plenty of ideas that we tried to share with management and the boards, and we've been less than successful in many cases about how to achieve improvements.
Ron, we have a question from Wendy. And Wendy, are you on? Do you want to say it? Do you want to unmute yourself? Wendy?
Hi, Ron.
Hi.
I had a question, a couple actually. I have to go back and find me what I
There
said.
you are. I see you.
Most of the wage increases, I think, were involved with the minimum wage, particularly because we seem to be targeting the 51 people that the 51, what is it, average persons or whatever it is that they call in the restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
So majority of the people in the restaurant are minimum wage workers, other than the chefs and the management. So yeah, that was a big hit to our budget. There's no question about that.
Mm-hmm.
But I went through all the financials as well. And it's like, what are we willing to accept? Are we willing to cut back on, have our restaurant open 3 nights a week? Or no formal clubhouse stuff?
Well,
or do we want
question.
less security? There's trade-offs when we're looking at, letting people go. And that's a big decision, I think.
Right, and it's exactly the perfect question to ask, because the situation is, what I'm suggesting is that the hard thought process, let's call it a paradigm shift of thinking about things about value versus cost. Let's take the restaurant, for example. Let's say that we need to first of all understand, is it or is it not a profitable enterprise? Is it a restaurant that outside the villages would go belly up because it's not profitable? You can't run a business like that. And if it's not profitable, that's okay, as long as we all know how it's being funded. And I'll tell you how it's being funded. It's by the HOA fees. It's the only place they have it done. So the question is, what kind of perks, what kind of restaurant, what value does it bring to the villages? And I believe it does bring a value. And we're not talking about taking it out. We're talking about an activity, an exercise to in detail evaluate it, and then decide, hey, what if the restaurant was managed externally by another group instead of internally by our own people? What if the menu was different? A lot of what ifs. And those answers aren't forthcoming. What is forthcoming is a line item on the budget to just continue the way we have. And that's not going to work.
So what we're going to do is we're not going to try to spend the full hour, like with an exact example, but I think it's really important that Ron's comments about just kind of re-examining, if you were in business, taking a look, all of us that worked in business, if you have $34 million, what do you get for that? And so what I think Ron was trying to say in that process was that we need to cap our expenses and then start to make tough decisions. I'm going to move on to Patty Burke. Patty said that she has a quick comment on expense reduction. Patty, are you?
Yeah, thanks. And I was recently the victim of expense reduction. I was laid off about 6 months ago as a result of COVID. And the way the company did it is they went to every manager. And by the way, I thought the way they did it was very well managed and very humane. They went to every manager and said, you need to take a look at your expenses and look at your people and decide what's a must-have versus a nice-to-have. And I need you to cut it by 50%, because we were an executive education company and our income was reduced by 50% because there were no in-person educational events. And everyone did that. And it turned out that my project was cut. And so I was cut. They gave me severance and, that's what happened. But it forced every manager to evaluate very specifically what they really needed to run their piece of the business and what they didn't need. And I think that, to get the John Hughes of the world and the Scott, I'm not sure of his name, Pro Shop of the world, and say, if you had a 50% budget cut, what would you do? And let them come back with the ideas. And then, we'll see
well said.
we're
Well
willing
said.
to look at.
Right. That, I think
Another,
that,
just
I,
real quick, another sort of spin on that, because I 100% agree with you, is because I'm from the medical device operating field. I mean, I've had companies bigger than $30 million, which is the size of the villages. You were always under some kind of budget constraint challenge. So the issue is, you say to your people, let's take an example. The exercise goal is we want to have no HOA increases next year. Just as a
Exactly.
goal. Go the managers, and this is where the big bucks are, by the way, the general manager and his staff, not the restaurateur, so to speak. Go back to the table, sharpen your pencil, take out a piece of paper, and show me what services we're used to are going to be reduced because we can't afford it or don't want to afford it, or where's the fat? There's fat everywhere. We've all been through this. So it's the exercise to force people as managers to do the hard thinking and make some strong recommendations, and then you make the call on what you want to do.
Yeah. And by the way, this applies to Brightview and every contractor and every expense. I just get an ache in the pit of my stomach when I pass the corporation yard and see that we must be maintaining 30 vehicles. Do we really need a fleet? Oh, and plus you're not counting public safety. Why do we need these fleets of vehicles? So just another area that needs to be looked at.
great, thank you.
Helen,
I've got Bill Johnson wanting to speak. Okay, but I see you, and Bob,
Thank you, Helen.
I'm going to try to get everybody. But thank you so much, people, for listening. This is such a positive thing. Bill, go.
Thank you. I really am here just because I have information about perhaps a way to save the villages a little bit of money. On both sides of the villages, you have two large ranches. The ranch to the south is 4,500 acres, has a professional cowboy, a ranch manager, who is very anxious to get his cows back into the villages. The same man had his cows in the villages 22 years ago. He set up the watering, did everything for them, and he's anxious to do that again. The cows would come in, they would eat the poison oak, they would eat all the brush up as high as they can reach, and it would make it safer, fire safer for all of us. And it's a very simple thing. I've talked to the hiking club, they're in favor of it. The people in Val Vista seem to be in favor of it. Anybody who borders the ranch, the Kuhn Ranch on the north side of us, is in favor of it. You can see the difference that cows make. If you're on the third hole, this is the first year that Peggy has had her cows back in that pasture. And in just 3 or 4 weeks, they are walking that down to nothing. At any rate, they're there.
They're
wonderful,
available. Bill.
Richie
I've written it down, and I think Bob is listening. So with that, I'm going to move a segue over.
Do it.
I'm gonna.
The board already voted it down.
Well, but just because the board votes it down, there's a lot of us. Okay, I'm going to shoot this now because we're talking safety, and slide it over to Bob Dolce.
Thanks, Helen. I think for everybody's benefit, if you're not aware, tomorrow the club board will approve a proposal that I submitted to take a look at several different safety and emergency response documents so as to be able to create a new emergency response plan here at the villages that will take fire, will take smoke, everything that was already mentioned. It will take that into consideration. After the proposal is approved tomorrow, I will be publishing in the Villager an article inviting for two villagers to be a part of this committee. The committee will be comprised of 2 at-large villagers, 5 or 6 members of EPIC, representatives from the staff, a representative from the club board, who is Lee Thompson, and a representative from VGA. And part of the process, after we review the documents and submit our recommendations for what will be the text of this new document, then I will be inviting all villagers who want. I'll be sending out an email to all the DACs and to villagers to invite to a big Zoom meeting or an in-person meeting, depending, so as to get people's input.
Right.
And then the final version will be approved by the board.
Bob, I think we are all encouraged by the fact it's happened. I think the concern is just how long it's taken. But because many of us have really lived through the fear, and if you didn't remember, we have safety concerns. The first thing we need to do is get EPIC back up and rolling. It shouldn't be shut off because of COVID. And if we don't remember we have safety issues, I'm sure a lot of us felt the earthquake last week. Listen, Ouija has a comment here. Ouija, are you there? Ouija?
Hi. Yes, I realized when I was listening to people talk that I do have experience in terms of salaries, because I ran a very large preschool in Los Altos for 8 years, and we had to set salaries, come up with salaries every year. And the percentages that Ron was giving just seem high to me, particularly when those of us, and I, by the way, just moved in here in June, so, I'm kind of a newbie, but, that percentage raised, the last one I wrote down was 6.1%. And I remember that it was typical for us, and it was a preschool, so, we weren't necessarily paying the big bucks, but 2 to 3% was like the limit for us, because preschools do have a really high percentage of their budget is from salaries. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say. I just, that seems.
Helen?
Yes, Ron?
Real quick, just to clarify, the 6% numbers, the 6.2, 4.9, 6.1, those are the increases of the HOA cost.
The HOA fees.
What the salary, specifically the salary number for this year, and it's still a large number, was 3.75. Okay.
Okay, and I think, we have a lot of information about general numbers of how much of the budget. Hasn't the budget for salaries and compensations gone up over $600,000 in the current year we're in? I believe that's the number.
Yeah, very much, because again, the base is $9 million bucket, and so it's not hard to get when you throw benefits, salaries, the 401k, and all those things together. It's a $9 million bucket of money.
And that cost has been going up the last at least 3 years under this current management. Has been a commitment of raising money. And I think what we're just talking about here, folks, it's not personal. It's what's personal is it's personal for all of us to ensure that we can still afford to live here. We have Barbara who said, how do we get recognized by the board so our input is accepted and used for guidance? So I see some other hands going up, but I would like to, I'm trying desperately to try to answer all the questions that are out there. So the question is, and I think this speaks to some of the concerns I've had recently, where you go to speak, but you feel like it's just like, yeah, for a little bit of time, and then they move on to the next topic. And so Del, could you kind of, with your experience from the DAC, as well as speaking at some of these meetings, could you talk about kind of how the process is to be heard with boards at this time?
So there are multiple ways of the villagers providing input, all of which is rather incomplete. You can submit a post letter. You're limited to 200 words or less, and there's generally no response back. you can speak at one of the board meetings. Both the club board and the association board provides for a member forum. The member forum is normally 20 minutes, allocated time, 2 minutes per person. And typically you can provide input, but it doesn't mean that you'll get an answer or a reaction. I will say that the association board has made what I would consider a big improvement. They've taken that members forum and instead of leaving it to the end, they have positioned that in the beginning. So it's not like you run out of time. The other method is you can email any board director. And typically the board directors are fairly good at responding. The issue there is you're the only one that would see that response. So one of the things that I've suggested to both boards is to have more town meetings where, similar to this, where we take a topic and you allow the community to speak up, provide their input, the suggestions that can be made, as well as answers as far as why something is possible or not possible. Now, I know COVID has prevented a lot of things. However, the utilization of the Zoom meetings, I think, in all honesty, provides a lot more input. And if you think about it, when I used to attend the CBOD meetings up at Foothill, you you really had about maybe 20, 30 people. And lately, when you look at Zoom meetings, especially the ABOD meetings, there's a significantly larger group of people. So in order to get our voices heard, I would like a lot of people to encourage the board to be more open and to go back to holding these town hall meetings. You pick a topic like right now, we're seeing a lot of questions and a lot of that, and a lot of it is because of why we came to be, is that a lot of people are frustrated and would like to see something happen and don't have the means or the conduit to raise that question. So I think if more of us suggested to the boards that they hold more open meetings, I think it would be a lot better.
And just to follow up on what Dell said, I think the difference is initially when we went into COVID, people were using our boards and committees were using Zoom, and they flipped away from that into a webinar format where the only people that can be seen on a screen are those that are the actual controllers of the meeting. And it was very important for us today that everybody could see each other so that out of this dialogue of Zoom, we'd be able to talk to each other in the future. Tom, I want to go to you. Tom McLaughlin. Are you good, Tom? Liz, can you unmute him? Tom and Elza McLaughlin.
Yeah, I'm here.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, I am on the ABOT, okay? And we are dealing with these problems because they're hurting us too, just as much on an individual basis. In Val Vista, we had a situation, and I haven't heard anybody mention this, but they're trying to develop an empirical database to deal with wood rot. Now, what I'm talking about there is there's wood rot, and then you go in and try and fix it. And what happened to us in Val Vista, we overran the budget for the paint and the woodwork by $100,000. We were at 375. It turned out to be 475. So over the last 3 years, we have been hit with 20% uppers, which convert to 72% overall. And this last year, we had 8.4. So we have experienced the higher end of the raises in the homeowner duty. But One of the things that you haven't mentioned is what about the cost of insurance? What they are doing right now is trying to develop a database that says every time we touch a piece of wood, this is what it costs us. And the way they're doing it, because they don't have any, I would say, formula to go to, what they have to do is we get bids. The bids come in, they pick the responsive bids, right? And we do the job. And then all of a sudden they get to the end of the job and they can't complete it because there's too much work left and not enough money. So now they're going to start to enter contingency factors so that we can price what the job is really going to cost without having the real cost in the bid. Okay, so this is what happened to us. That's why it overran $100,000. So until they develop, and Tim is doing this, he's trying to develop a database that we can use so that we can get out in front of what the real cost is and make sure we budget allocate the right amount of money to get the job done. That's just wood rot. Nobody mentioned insurance. Nobody mentioned
Well,
insurance.
hey, Tom.
Yeah.
Tom, in the interest of time, I'm gonna kind of cut that a little short. I think those are fixed costs, and I don't think that was the direction we've been going in all of that. But I just want to. I totally hear what you're saying. There's like 20 people that are asking to speak. And so what I want to do is jump down to Joyce right now, and then I'm
Okay.
going up to Bud. Okay,
Sure.
Thank you, Tom. I'm sorry.
right.
Joyce?
Well, number one, thank you, everybody. I mean, a lot of work went into this Zoom meeting, and as far as I'm concerned, it's just extremely effective and very helpful. I'm a resident here for 33 years, and I'm sure quite a few of you have been with us that long. Over the years, we've had management teams that listen and management teams that don't. I have gone to meetings, I've raised my hand, I've made a comment, asked a question, and I was told, no, we're not going to take care of that today. We're not talking about that. When you talked about expenses, my question is, you said the salaries, and I understand that. And you said the employees of the restaurant facilities. And yes, okay. But when they don't work, they don't make any money. So it surprises me that that's an issue. When they do work, by the way, they produce revenue. The golf shop's the same way. I know COVID has put a lot of restraints, but they're revenue producing assets, and they're not being handled to the full extent. And I went to a meeting, the food and beverage meeting, and there are not open ears there. There are no open ears.
Thank you. Bud, if you speak to water, can you keep it to about a minute or two?
I'll try. One thing I think we ought to consider is that Meg Flanagan, our controller, is a valuable asset. And what we have not talked about is pre-pandemic revenue that helped us a great deal. And since we're going on a year and a half, maybe 2 years, we will not have that. Can someone ask Meg to submit the pre-pandemic revenue sources, weddings, that type of thing, meetings, the revenue that went to the restaurants, to the various clubhouses when our parties and such were had. Those were revenues that we are not getting, that we should understand that it's temporary. Hopefully so, it's temporary. So I'll leave that and I'll get back to you, Helen. somebody can do that, hopefully.
Great, thank you. Okay, I have, someone was just raising their hand. Oh, hi, Miss Irish gal, would you be able to speak?
Are you talking about me?
I am. Jean Gillette, please.
Oh, no, this is, you had Val.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, Jean Gillette.
Okay.
Jean Gillette. Jean, you need to unmute.
All right. One of the problems I have with the money that's spent here is on landscaping. I was on a landscaping committee years ago. It was such a headache. I couldn't believe it. We live in a desert. Maybe this is not the time to take this up with all of you people, but we spend an inordinate amount of money just having green lawns in a desert. And there is desert landscaping that is beautiful, and we should not be. I watched the landscapers, how they divide plants that belong to us, put them in 1 gallon cans, put them back in the truck, and they take them out and sell them. There's an awful lot of stuff going on. And I object to the landscaping. Our money is wasted on landscaping. So it's something I'd like the group to take up with sometime. Thank you.
You are welcome. Bud Burkett, I think you're still on. Bud, can you mute yourself, please? Thank you.
I'll do.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Margaret Lamb. Margaret, I'm not sure where you are.
Unmute yourself, Mother.
Was there a question for me?
Yes. Margaret, you had something you wanted to speak to?
Oh, yeah. So I guess everybody have a lot of great ideas, and I have some too. So my question is there a way that we can just catalog those somewhere? And then I think you guys did a great job of collecting a lot of input from next door and categorize them into the 3 areas. But I thought that if we even something as simple as the Google Doc, that we could just capture everybody's ideas, good, bad, or indifferent, and categorize them, and then do a little bit of vetting, just so that people felt that they would be listened to.
Absolutely. And in fact, Val, did you want to speak to what we plan to do?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm seeing and hearing a lot of questions, and we don't have a lot of time to really address every question the way we could. So I want to remind all of you, you can send your concerns to our email address, and I promise you, we will look at it, we will respond. But we will collect your concerns. They won't go off into the ether and you'll never hear from us again. So if you aren't heard today, if your question is not heard, be sure to email us your concerns.
Well, and on top of that, Val, Liz and I already have a plan that, just so you know, if I can't get to all the chat questions, we are going to download all those chat questions and we are going to put them all straight to our website too. And we're also recording today, so that, because there's nothing secret about this. I think the goal for all of us is to make this our forever home, the greatest place that we can possibly have in our life. And so our goal is to share our knowledge. We're not trying to do right and wrong here. We're trying to let our ears be open so that everyone can be heard. There is someone named Kay Medelson.
Yes. So for the ideas that we collected, I don't think people are looking for for any answers or response. I think the first step is just to capture them.
And we're going to do that. We're going to print every single statement you guys have said today. We're going to have that available. Okay.
That's great. Thanks.
Kay Medelson, are you still on, Kay?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Can you share with us your thoughts, please?
Oh, well, I was curious if the club or HOA association for all these salaries applied for the PPP loans, and that should offset a lot of that expense during this last 10, 11 months and going forward because the PPP2 loan just came out. I was wondering if any employees got furloughed because of COVID. I know of a few, but I don't know if it was more than a handful. And my other question, which is I think it's good to collect all these ideas. I'm thinking that to get heard by the board, instead of one person going up, maybe have initiatives that we're interested in having them really pay attention to, is having a signed document, being able to verify how many residents are supporting this question, bringing this up. That way you can walk in and you're not just one person, you might be 80 people or you might be 150 people. Right. In which case I think that they would have to listen, because then if they don't, I think that would be very obvious.
Kay, I think your comments are spot on to everything that this team of people have come together with. We believe that Dell used a word that was so appropriate. He said, we need a conduit where we can ensure that that information is going both ways. And I know that I've gotten in the habit now of sending emails to all board members, hoping that it might resonate and stick with one of them. There is no coincidence as to why we held this meeting at 4 o'clock today. We would encourage all of you to hop on the ABOD and the CBOD calls tomorrow and to be vocal. There is no right and wrong here, folks. What's right and wrong is when we are quiet. This is our community. We are all owners of this community, and everyone's opinion matters. And I think that's what we're trying so hard to convey today, is saying we need all of you. It's like everyone needs to convey this image of what we want and what we need. And so we're gonna keep doing that. And if really by a show of hands or whatever, we would like to know if you guys would like to have more Zoom meetings like this, because we're in it to win it, so they say. We're in it for what the Villages means to each one of us. And so we're hoping if you guys like this, that we could do something like this again. D Truax. D, I'm looking for you. It's hard. There's so many of you on board here that I have to go through 4 pages. Hey, D, are you around? Okay, I am not seeing D. D briefly wanted to make sure that we understood the statement of work, and I'm going to assume that had something to do with the fact that there seems to be a significant amount of cost overruns on many of our projects. And that is truly a concern that we had. I don't know, Ron, could you fire out just a couple of the big capital improvements and how much money's been spent, just real quick?
Well, I think that the ones that come to mind, be that water, that pond on the golf course, was a hole 10. Is that what it is? The second one
18,
might be the bat.
18, yeah.
I'm not a golfer, by the way. I'm just a businessman. The second one might be that bathroom that's on the main road going down that was built, and then they figured out later on they needed to have water you could actually wash your hands with. The pickleball is huge. And by the way, regarding pickleball and all the comments about we have to have pickleball because we'll lose potential new residents here because we don't have pickleball. I'll tell you how you lose residents is when you have to share with them the HOAs. That affects everybody. Pickleball probably affects 150 people, maybe 200. I don't know. Out of 2,000 or 4,000. So those are the 3 big ones. People have made comments about the slurry, the road surfaces. We're always continually doing that kind of stuff. But these numbers are, hundreds of thousands of dollars of projects. And I think maybe Dell has some specifics too.
And does anybody have a statement about the PPE loan? Because several people have talked about that. Ron, do you know where we're at on it?
So it exists on the books as a loan, and as best as one can discern it. Now, again, the board members know it because they're involved in this, but it's unclear whether it's an obligation that's going to be taken to the full extreme and forgiven because it was used for the purpose of salaries that were offset, or it's sort of in limbo. We're not sure if we really want to cash it out. because clearly it was used to help a lot of people not lose their jobs, and that's what it was defined for. But it's on the books. It's
1.5 million.
Oh, 5.
1.5 million is what I,
1.5 million. Yeah. So I don't know the answer of how financially it's being handled. I know it's on the books.
Okay.
It was
Thank you. Dee, I think I think you did
Hi.
come to life.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you
Dee?
hear me?
Yes, go for it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So no, I live in Glen Arden. We've been here 7 years. And, you know, Patty Burke forwarded this invite to me. And so it's interesting when they, you know, start all these projects. I just wonder, number one, how many bids do they go out for each time? Especially for these, you know, really expensive, high cost projects. I mean, I work in high tech and we have to go out for a minimum of 3 bids every time we go out for price quotes. Then there's always a statement of work that needs to accompany these bids. So it details everything that, you know, we expect as a customer to be done and what the exact costs are going to be, line item per line item. So I just wonder if that's being done, and if it is, great, but if not, that's terrible. And then I would think that there should be some transparency, you know, among the community to see like, this is outrageous and, you know, anyway, so those are just my thoughts on some things about these bids and these big expensive projects that are going on.
Great. Thank you. Let's see. There was somebody raising their hand somewhere. Tom, just real quick, because we only have about a minute left.
mute.
I think one of the things you ought to ask is, you've got a club board member here, Ed Ing. He's right down there, and he would have some input on it, but I know that most of the work we do get 3 bids if we can get them, okay, for every job. And the lowest responsible bidder, in other words, somebody who's responded and not left things out, is who usually wins the job. But Ed can speak to that. Why don't we give him a chance to speak?
Sure. Sure. Ed, I don't see you. You're somewhere.
Yep.
Ed, is there
I'm
something
here.
you'd like to say?
Yes.
Okay.
You guys can hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
This is Ed Ing. I'm one of the new members on the Seaboard in the last few months here. Yes, we do. According to Tim, we do receive 3 multiple. I shouldn't say 3. Multiple bids on all projects. It is usually it goes to the lower bidder, but at times, Tim said that because they also relied on the reliability and familiarity with the villages, it's not necessary the lowest bidder will get the job. So it is a decision that the staff makes here. We, the board member, do not get to review all the bids, and it is part of the execution. We only give them policies and directions and what they should be doing, and we expect them to follow that, getting multiple bids. And I do see, let's say, one area I did look at on the painting projects, and, there are many villages within the villages here in our community, and those painting projects had gone to many different companies that do the painting for us. It's not always the same one. But, of course, landscaping, there's a master contract with Brightview. It always go to one place. And, I know you all have a lot of, contentious about that. We have to look at that specific detail. I also want to, answer a few questions earlier about, furlough, about the PPP loan. Yes, it's about $1.6 million. We say it's kind of in the bank, it is a loan that we are expecting, the keyword is expecting, the government will forgive us. I believe the staff is working on the filing of that loan forgiveness paperwork. I do not know exactly when that will be completed. But it is a sum of money that's sitting aside that if you gone to our meetings on the Seaboard meeting, our budget currently is still balanced without, if the loan is not forgiven, if you understand what I mean. That means if someday that loan is not forgiven and we have to pay back that loan, we are still in a balanced budget right now.
Ed, could you speak to whose responsibility it is? I have heard through the grapevine that any business that does have to repay or has to file a certain number of, I don't know, forms or whatever to ensure that that loan is forgiven. Whose onus is that to ensure that that will be done here within the villages?
I do not know specifically which person inside Tim's staff it is. I probably Meg and other people. It's not a single person. I'm not sure who it is.
Okay. Okay.
But it's being done. And there were, I believe the number is 62 employees were furloughed, during this time. In the beginning, there was not that many because in order to have this PPE loan applied to us or get approval on us, we have to keep certain employees employed so that we would be qualified for such a loan. But at the end, my understanding is that we have at least furloughed around 60 some employees in order to balance the budget because we have significantly decreased the income, especially in the clubhouse, and also the golf operation has also suffered quite a bit in the beginning of the year. I think it caught up a lot. Actually, right now, I think if you guys go to tomorrow's meeting, I have some reading on it. The income on the golf courses is actually have covered some of our expenses or losses on the clubhouse.
Okay, thank you. Well, folks, it's coming to 5 o'clock, and what our commitment was to not take too much of your day, but what you have shared with us is the concerns. Basically, you validated, I think, in a lot of our mind, kind of the direction we're heading. What we are encouraging you to do is go to villagersforchange.org. We have a website. There are, we will put on this the link to today's meeting so you can share that with other people that would like to see it. We're going to capture, Liz is going to capture the chat feature just so that we can put out there like a did you know, so that people are aware of hearing the concerns that villagers are raising. And again, our voices are what make a difference. We need to be strong in our convictions, whatever those are. If you like the way things are status quo, then you need to be a strong voice. And on the reciprocal, if you believe that we could look at things slightly different, you need to be a strong voice. We encourage you to go to those meetings tomorrow at 9:30 and 1:30 for the ABOT and CBOT and speak up, because this is our home. Remember, the workers, it's their job, but this is our home. And so we want the very best for all of us. And we can't thank you enough for being a part of today. We will plan to do this again before the next board meeting in February, if not sooner. But thank you all for being a part of today. You truly are what makes this such a special place to live. Thank you.